Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everyone. Back on Michael's car, still in the back portion of the car, reinstalling all of the cool, pretty stuff. We do have the rear wheels back on the car, though. We're pretty much done with everything that has to be done in the wheel wells. And I'm going to pull off the driver's side rear tire, which I said didn't have to be pulled off again in one of my my social media posts. But for the video, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it off. But what we've worked on over the last day or two was getting all of the stuff in the wheel wells taken care of. So like the rear splash shields and then some close-off plates in the front and cleaning. We had cleaned up all of these panels on the car earlier in the build or the rebuild of Michael's car. But the splash panels, both front and rear, got stored safely upstairs here at the shop and forgotten about. And they never got cleaned. So that was one of those things that I knew about, I remembered, but I was dreading. And so yesterday was the day. I set them out in the sun to loosen up all of the oil and grease and whatever else had been kind of thrown on them over the years. And then I hit them with purple spray, and I let them just bake in the sun, basically, just so that purple cleaner could do its thing and loosen it up. And then I took the garden hose, I sprayed them down, and then I went after them with a Scotch-Brite or an abrasive pad and really got them cleaned up. The last thing I did is I just took a sanding block with some, I think it was 320 grit paper, and I went ahead and sanded the side of the panels that you're going to see that are visible from the inside of the wheel well, just to put some grain on them, make them all kind of uniform in appearance, and then they went back on. So I'm going to turn the camera around and I'll give you an idea of what we did on the car, and we'll keep moving forward. All right, little hard to see, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull the wheel off on this side, but I want to show you the comparison so you can see that the two sides of the car are not symmetrical. So I made a closeout panel that goes right in here, and that just keeps all of the debris from going into the gap between the body and the actual chassis aluminum when you're driving down the road. So if you go through a puddle, it's not going to, get your arm wet as you're sitting in the car. So we've got that in on this side. This is the rear splash panel. I'm going to pull off the tire, as I said, and I'll give you a better view of that. But that's our battery box poking through there. So this side of the car took quite a bit more, fabrication work to get the rear splash panel in it than obviously the passenger side did, because the passenger side, basically, it just went back in where it was. We've got all new bulb seal in there. We've got the roll bar mount bolts all tight now. So that's the third rear mount for the passenger side roll bar. Remember, on the Mark IIIs and before, those bolted in. And then we've got the panel fastened at the bottom, and I'll show you that in just a second. But you can see on this side how much narrower that close-off panel is in comparison to the driver's side at the top. So I have a pattern that I use to make these, and they are somewhat model specific. That is to say, the one for the Mark IIIs and before are different than the pattern that I have for the Mark IV. And that's because that 3/4 inch bar that kind of separates the top and the bottom of the rear of the cockpit is on the inside of the Mark III, but it's on the outside of the Mark IV. Let me go ahead, I'm going to pull the wheel off on the driver's side here, and we'll get a better look inside the wheel well on the driver's rear of Michael's Mark III. All right, so you can see the window that we had to create inside to make the battery box fit in here. Now, don't, you know, if you tackle this type of modification in your car, don't worry, this does not interfere with the wheel and tire at all. The reason that the splash panel gets pushed back in this section is so that it rides on this inside lip here of the fiberglass fender portion of the body. And so the panel is actually tilted back on the outside portion. So the other things that I had to contend with were using the old drilled holes for all of the rivets. And some of them had been drilled with no rivets in them. So somebody obviously drilled this before they fit it to the car and then realized that there was no way they were going to drill all the way through this weld. And so they just left the hole. And normally I won't put rivets in this bottom portion. I only put the rivets in the top. So this kind of hangs free. But there again, they were already there. And so I didn't see any other choice but to use rivets there to hold that in place. The other thing that we had to do is we had to modify the bottom of it. This usually isn't an issue. But for whatever reason, this replacement gas tank, the flange is in a different position than it is on the factory Ford tank. And so what I did is I just notched out the panel right here, and it gives enough clearance so that the tank and the panel don't interfere with one another. The bulb seal just helps to seal any debris from getting in behind here. There is gaps. I mean, there's a little gap there. There's a little gap at the top. But some of those things you're just not going to be able to avoid. And then we've got brand new bulb seal all the way around the all the way around this entire panel. So that's going to keep as much debris out of the rest of the car as it possibly can. In the front, we basically create these panels to block off any of that water and debris from going into the cockpit. I'll open the door real quick, and you can see there's carpeting in here, but there is honestly a gap behind the carpeting. The carpeting is just kind of holding the gap tight so you can't see it from this side. On the other side, I'll see if I can post the pictures that I posted on social media. There's a sizable gap in there. And if you drive through enough water, then that is going to get that carpeting soaking wet. And so this just keeps all that out of there. There's bulb seal on the edges of it. And like I said, I have a generic pattern that I use to cut these out. But on this one, I ended up cutting it down on height versus the other one by about a ½ an inch. Because again, the car from side to side isn't symmetrical. And I had to do the bulb seal at the top a little bit differently on this side versus the other side, where the curve was enough that I could wrap it around and do it in one piece versus two. And then that bulb seal goes all the way down to the bottom, and then it's going to seal off that section from the cockpit. So over on the other side, I didn't pull the wheel off, but I'll go back to it just for a quick reference and show you that at the top, the bulb seal just wraps around. It's got that nice gentle curve right in here that allowed the bulb seal to just be one piece and not be cut in two. And again, it's just sealing off the wheel well from the passenger compartment to keep the water and the debris out of there. And same thing, it goes all the way down to the bottom and seals everything off. One thing that I'm going to show you is how we deal with the bottom panel fastening. So there's a tab on this panel on the other side that basically contours to the body. And what we do is we just take a black pop rivet It's right here. And we pop rivet that. So you can see here's that tab, and it comes underneath the body right here. And then just, you know, ½ inch or so from the edge, we drill it, and then we go ahead and we put a black rivet in, because the black rivet on a dark colored car tends to disappear. If the car was a lighter color like Jim's white car, we would do that with just a silver rivet, and it would blend in better than obviously a black rivet would. So that's what I worked on the past, what, 2 days or so. It doesn't seem like a lot, but as I stated in the previous video, this is not the time where you're going to just want to start making up time and rushing through things, because that's when you're going to start making mistakes, and those mistakes are going to be with you for a lifetime or however long you own the car, because they're going to eat at you. The last thing that I wanted to point out to those of you that may be building an older car, a Mark III or a Mark II or a Mark I that's just been, it's a build that's just been languishing. That bulb seal, this bulb seal that we use, like around the trunk, and the stuff that we use around those rear splash panels and the front splash panels and what goes on the aluminum panels before the body goes on, that does have a life to it. And so if you've got a build that either you've been holding on to, or that has gone from builder to builder to builder, and now you're the one completing the build, just know that that bulb seal is probably at the end of its life, and you're probably going to have to replace it. The stuff that we pulled off of Michael's car was already starting to get hard, to the point where if you brushed against it, and you didn't have to push, you just had to kind of brush against it, the actual rubber bulb part of it would start to come loose of the plastic clip portion of it that goes on the end of the aluminum panels. And the worst time to realize that you need to replace that is when you're fitting the body. Because chances are you're just going to go, screw it, it'll be fine. And you'll put the body on, and then you're going to have all these gaps. And it's not that expensive. I think the price has gone up, but I think the stuff is about $1 a foot, something like that. And I think we ordered 50 feet or 60 feet for Michael's car, which seems like a lot. But when you consider all of the different panels that bulb seal attaches to, you've got all of the body, the top portion where the body meets the aluminum panels, all that gets bulb seal. You've got all of the splash panels, the rear splash panels, the front splash panels. In our case, we're doing a one-piece surround for the radiator. And therefore, that has bulb seal, not just on the leading edge of it here, but it has the bulb seal on the back side of it as well. So there's got to be almost 10 feet of bulb seal in that piece alone. So it adds up really quick. And so my advice to you is, you can buy the bulb seal from Factory 5. They'll sell it to you in a by the foot length. But by us, most of the upholstery outlets carry that bulb seal. You can get it from McMaster Car or a specialty like hardware store. And I would suggest that you replace all of that stuff with new if there's any question how long it's been around. Because like I said, the last thing you want to do is wait until you're putting that body on and then be in a position where you have to make a choice. Is the body going on, or are you going to wait for that bulb seal to show up? So I think I'm going to try to move on to the rear trunk lid struts right now, and we'll see how that goes, and that'll determine what else we cover in the video, if anything. Alrighty, music update. Rolling Stones, 19th Nervous Breakdown. Hood struts? Trunk struts? Trunk struts are in. Two things. Get out of the shadow here. The instructions that Mike Everson gives with the trunk struts are really good. but sometimes you may have to make adjustments to them. I learned from Jeff Miller a long time ago with these externally mounted hinges on the Mark IIIs and before, that you don't want the trunk opening too far, because when it does that, it kind of puts the hinges in a bind, and what happens is the pins that go through, the hinge pins, will actually work themselves out of the hinges, and then you'll go to open the trunk and one of the hinges will fall apart. So we try to not let these trunks open more than 45 degrees, and so I'm going to show you how far we have it opening right here. So you can see that's about 45 degrees, maybe a little bit more, maybe 50 degrees. The other thing is that you usually want the struts, the gas struts, to mount body up. So that way the liquid inside of them, the hydraulic fluid that's inside of them, will lubricate the seals. So the shaft portion of them is pointed down. But that's difficult on the trunk. I'm going to show you on the hood real quick. This is going to take a second because I'm going to have to open the latch and then go around to the other side because I've got the lift up in the air. But so on the hood it's easy because the struts are face down regardless of which position they're in. So if you look here, here's the body of the strut and here's the shaft. So even when it's in the down position, the struts are still downhill towards the shaft because of the taper of the body. But you can see in the back, if you mount these body up when the trunk is open, as the trunk comes down, the angle of the trunk is going to put those in a position where the seals in for the shaft are not going to be lubricated. So you want to mount these body down here because it's adjusted or it's installed in the position that it is going to be in most of the time. And your trunk is going to be closed most of the time. The only time you're going to have it open is when you're getting something out of there, or, you know, if you're working on something inside the trunk. So always mount these with the body on this side, and make sure when the trunk is closed that the body of the strut is on an upward incline so that the seals get lubricated. I hope I'm explaining that properly. You can see I haven't done any cleaning in the trunk, and this is why. I knew I was going to be drilling. I drilled all of the fiberglass because, of course, these brackets go in with a couple of machine screws. So there's two machine screws here and here, and so all that fiberglass had to go somewhere. I knew it was going to go on the trunk, and so that's why I've told you guys, you just don't get caught up in vacuuming like every time you finish a project, because there's going to be something else that's going to get fiberglass dust all over it. Now I'm pretty much done in the trunk now. I've got everything strapped. I've got our wiring strapped up for our license plate light. It goes around the back of the 3/4 inch tube that goes across the trunk here, and then I've got it strapped to the bracket for the trunk strut. And then if you look right where it goes in, I've just put a dab of clear silicone, and that's just to keep the split loom in place, because the split loom, there's only room for it to kind of make the turn in past that aluminum. In the Mark IV, the fiberglass, you can get it to go in there a little bit easier, but with the aluminum panel that's on the Mark III, it's just difficult to get that to make the turn. And then I went ahead and I mounted our cover for our access to the license plate light. So the trunk is pretty much wrapped up. I think one of the last things I'm gonna do, trunk related, is I got this hardware from Miller, and I really want to replace that for him. So if he has another car that comes in with the external mounted hinges, and he needs some, what are these? These are 1/4 by 24, so they're fine thread 1/4 inch nuts. I want to pick some of those up at the local hardware store and bring those with me when I go pick up the hard top, so that he'll have some, just in case he needs some down the line. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get all the stuff in the trunk cleaned up. I'm going to put a lot of the tools away. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum the trunk. I've still got to put on our access cover for our fuel pump, which is going to go over here. I've got some machine screws that go into threaded inserts for that. I'm going to vacuum clean up the trunk, and then I think I'll bring you guys back just to show you what it looks like all finished up. Def Leppard, pour some sugar on me. All right, I got the trunk area all cleaned up. We've got everything wiped down. Not the body though. I've still got the dust on the body, as you have been told now many times. I'm just going to leave that. Just blow it off with compressed air from time to time. And I did just kind of a haphazard vacuuming of the trunk, because I've still got to put the bumpers on. So the bumpers, I've got to get, I still got to remain access over here. I've got to keep this cover off because I've got to get one of the bolts through here. The bottom bolt here we're going to replace with all thread, and then this bolt will actually come from the other side out. So the trunk is pretty much done. We've got everything in place. The trunk closes nicely, so everything came out really nice with that. And we've only got a few things left on the back of the car. Like I said, we've got the bumpers, and to put that access cover in over the top of the fuel pump, and I think the back of the car is pretty much done. And then I'll probably move to the front of the car. All in all, this is going to be a very nice finished car. I think that's going to do it for this video. We've still got a lot to do. We've got all of the stuff on the front of the car to do, the windshield, some stuff on the interior. We've got door panels. We've got to make some spacers for our door latches. If you remember, when Miller puts the door catch in, it's spaced out with flat washers. And so we're going to measure those out and cut a spacer that's the same thickness as the washers and clean that up a little bit. Little stuff like that. And then we've got, like I said, we've got the windshield that needs to go in. I'm probably just going to put that in loosely so that we can move the angle of it to adjust to the hardtop. The front bumpers need to go on, the front radiator surround, all that kind of stuff. We've got the pool noodle that needs to go in between the body and the chassis aluminum on the sides of the cockpit to keep that hot air from infiltrating into the foot boxes. So there's still a lot left to do on Michael's car, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle in some 25th anniversary content, and I'm also going to sprinkle in a little bit of content for Jim's car, because Jim's car right there. The registration for Jim's car is kind of moving forward, and so at some point he may need to take the car down to California Highway Patrol to get a VIN assignment and Bureau of Auto Repair and all that kind of stuff. And so it sure would be nice if it had brakes. So I'd like to get it up on the lift and at least get the brakes on it. And then we've got the engine that's going to be dropping into the 25th anniversary car here really soon. So I've got some stuff to prep for that to get that all ready to go. So as always, if you're enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, and we will see you guys all next time. Have a great day.